Hey you guys, it's Brass Facts here. We've been doing a lot of, sniper-esque precision rifle, whatever the hell content you want to call this recently. But as cool as these are, I want to do a pit stop with everyone's favorite, the SPR. SPRs are cool. Everyone knows about them. It's a 5.56, generally speaking, 5.56 precision-oriented gun, but a debate that many people engage in, and by many people, I just mean those that are artistic enough to get into the nitty-gritty details of shooting firearms to a level that would make a World of Warcraft raid leader blush, is the question of, is the SPR a fighting rifle or is it a precision gun? Now, the answer is obviously both, and that makes sense because the genesis of the original SPR, the Mark 12, was to give the team, the platoon, maybe even the company, a way to extend its engagement range. This also meant that in a pinch, it could operate within the platoon or in the team to do, regular fighting rifle stuff. And that is kind of the genesis or the objective of many SPRs in the civilian hands, a accurized 5.56 platform that can also do fighting rifle things. But that's where our, Magic the Gathering tier autism comes in. Which one is it? Or rather, which one is it first? Is the SPR a fighting rifle first and foremost with precision elements added in? Or is it a precision rifle first and foremost, and that's where we should focus on, and then it has, mostly due to the nature of just being a 5.56 gun, fighting elements tacked on? That and more today on Brass Facts.
This video, and honestly this channel, was made possible by Venture Surplus. As you guys know, this channel is now full-time. There's no other way really to make a video with very high round counts every single week without support from, other sources, sponsors if you will. And Venture Surplus has been sponsoring this channel for about 2 years now. So yeah, thank you Venture Surplus for making this whole journey possible. I appreciate it. If you, the viewer, need to go buy some surplus stuff, I think you know the deal by now. Venture Surplus sells surplus stuff. Due to the nature of surplus stuff, take a shot every time I say surplus, they have sort of a rotating cast of product, right? They get a bunch in all at once, it sells out, and then that product is gone until they can find it again, right? There is no stable supply chain for a lot of this stuff. So consider checking them out, once a week. Don't need to buy something every week, though they sure would love that. But if you see something cool, be sure to grab it because it might not be there next week. Alright, thank you Venture Surplus, thanks for all the good times, thanks for buying my burger at SHOT Show. Back to the video. Now it's important to note, most every rifle is going to be somewhere in between these two extremes. It's going to have, some slight bias for long range performance, or it's going to have some slight bias towards its fighting rifle attributes. This is a kind of philosophy video that kind of talk about the two extremes, and then when you find yourself somewhere in between, you can make those nuanced decisions to, bias towards the fighting rifle side or the sniper rifle side. And it explains why I am very much, spoiler alert, biased towards the fighting rifle side of things. If you're still confused, let's actually get into them in a little bit more specifics. Let's start with the SPR as a sniper rifle centric gun, fighting rifle second sort of setup. Historically, this has meant, 10x magnification, accurate barrel, $4 gajillion because it's from PRI, and maybe if you're lucky, you get an OTM type round. Nowadays, it goes even further than that. 18x being the norm, suppressors, bipod shooting bags, heavy Wundermetal barrels, and the proliferation of tripods is an excellent way to shoot in difficult terrain, and thus the mandatory inclusion of some form of ARCA rail. Rifles like this seem to be the progression of the 5.56 platform. It also ends up being the natural progression of many rifle builds you see on the internet. You shoot one long-range day and realize the limitation of your rifle, so you quickly reach for the credit card for more capability. Magnification especially is a big deal, as 5.56 is very sensitive to wind outside of golf course type ranges with a ton of big bright targets, windsocks, and a large dirt backdrop. The ability at range with magnification to spot your misses in less manicured environments and then to make, rapid follow-up corrections is so much easier with, at minimum, 18x compared to 10x. This was Hop's reaction after coming out to Utah and engaging 10x12s and headshot side targets out to 700. 10x was nice, but boy lord, give me more magnification. So what about the SPR fighting rifle first, precision rifle second? At first glance, it's the same wish list. Accurate, bipod, precision-oriented scope, maybe some ARCA rail mixed in for good measure. But the key is moderation here. Why? Let's go ahead and put a pin in that. Take me at my word for now that we want to maximize functionality while keeping weight down. The barrel, of course, needs to be accurate, but if you end up going like you were with the Sniper First system, you're going to end up with an 18-20-inch bull barrel, and you're going to have nothing left in the budget. You can go with more magnification with a 3-18 or even a 24 top-end scope, but most of those weigh upwards of 2 pounds when you put it in a mount, and you end up losing usable low-end magnification in run-and-gun scenarios. Suppressors are nice, but often they are simply too cumbersome when paired with longer barrels. There really isn't a formula here, just more what works for the users, what they prefer, what they're willing to give up on, and what they're not willing to give up on. I have two sort of variants of this. My original setup, very expensive, accurate barrel, full 18-inch goodness, as our all-father nothing fancy intended. However, this setup uses up a lot of our weight budget on the barrel section alone, and if I kept going in that vein, I'd end up with, once again, a very heavy Sniper First SPR. That meant everything else on the rifle, because of the barrel, had to be compromised to make up for that weight. No suppressor, very simplistic rail, 1 to 10x LPVO or 2.5 10x GLX, and a lightweight bipod, and light, and that's about it. This was a very capable setup, probably one of my better setups for chasing hits at extended ranges, and consistent first or second round hits at 700 yards on a 10x12 reduced size, or headshots on a 450 and in, were doable for my skill level. My second rifle right here is probably the more extreme implementation of this, perhaps to a level that most would consider academic. The barrel is a Geisley Cold Hammer Forge, not at all a precision-oriented barrel by any means, with 1.5-inch 10-shot groups, with my ammo of choice AAC 77 grade, which admittedly straddles the line of what would even considered precision ammo. The suppressor is a lightweight 5.56K Huxworks, but even then still, I decided to cut the barrel down to accommodate this extra weight at the end of it. There's a dot on top, that's basically for night vision only. I'm relying on the 2X on the 2 to 10X Mark V Leopold to do a lot of the heavy lifting for shooting, and it's basically what I use probably 90% of the time. The handguard is a very flimsy lightweight HDM rail, instead of going something with Arca rail built in, simply once again to reduce more weight. A lot of people wonder why I don't have Arca rail attachments here or an Arca rail, full length, say wedge lock style rail, and simply put, I don't really think it's necessary, especially on a fighting rifle oriented SPR. Most of the time, my shots are going to be impromptu in nature, so finding whatever cover is around me to stabilize off to is going to be the name of the game, and if I have more time, I can rely on the bipod and a shooting bag, or just the shooting bag off of a piece of cover. Now, it's not as good as a tripod, but I'm not going to bring a tripod for this type of rifle. And finally, because at the end of the day, I could just not use the Arca rail, I find them to be actually kind of a liability on rifles like this, because when you stabilize off of rocks, hard cover, and things like that, Arca attachment is actually quite sensitive to stuff like this, and they quickly get to the point where they're damaged, right? Because that sharp edge is a very sensitive thing that chips and breaks easy. Kind of the same deal if anyone's used quad rails a lot, right? Those actually chip and damage quite easily if you don't have a protective rail cover on them. In fact, the bipod with a tuned setup like this sort of allows this to flex into a shorter range rifle in the 200 yard range, where it just kind of behaves more like an IAR, where I can just drill targets at 200 yards with maybe 3 to 4 hits in flight in a row. Anyways, with this, we're left with something decently capable, and I think a lot of people kind of laugh at these setups, and it's like, bro, that's just a GPR with extra steps, and yeah, actually, I think that's accurate. That's, to me, what an SPR is. And sort of like the Coke Pepsi blind taste test, if you put someone in a room and tell them you're going to go shoot long range, and you hand them the Sniper First SPR, and then you hand them the Fighting Rifle First SPR, everyone's going for the Sniper First one, obviously. But I think that ignores the everything else. And the SPR does, in fact, have to do the everything else, at least from a civilian perspective. So I think the more relevant way to kind of view the comparison between these two is not which one is more capable. The answer is very much the sniper rifle-oriented SPR. But instead, in what scenario would you grab the sniper rifle-oriented SPR over anything else? And the answer almost universally for me is no, I would honestly never grab it. Why? Well, two reasons. The first of which is why really bother? Not in the sense of why bother with the weight, but instead, why bother if I'm going to bring something that weighs more than a fully equipped battle rifle? Why am I not running a battle rifle? Or better yet, pay 1 to 2 extra pounds and get a semi-automatic sniper system, like the 6.5 Creedmoor. And yes, all this stuff we're adding to it does push every last grain of performance out of it, but at some point you're throwing good money, and more importantly weight, after bad, and maybe you should consider that at some point you just need to scale up to a heavier round. Now, there are obviously certain real-world conditions where 5.56 sniper systems are absolutely what the doctor ordered. Namely, I think SWAT and police and urban environments tend to go for that because they really want an accurate round without too much worry of overpenetration. But from the civilian perspective, I don't see that as nearly as relevant. Because, I hate to break it to you, you don't actually care that much about overpenetration because the scenarios you're going to use a rifle like this are not home defense or even defensive oriented. This is a very much Second Amendment oriented rifle. Shit, you're in the precision world, you're already beyond help. Go ahead and cash out your kid's college fund, your 401k, and just go get a 6-ARC rifle. That probably is going to be a have your cake and eat it too moment. Now, there's always the argument of ammo logistics, but from a civilian perspective, running the same ammo type as the main force is not nearly as big of a deal when the main force is 3 other homies. Especially given the viability of your rifle kind of goes completely out the window when you switch from, your nicer zeroed stuff to, FMJ. But I think this is something you can kind of tolerate. There are ranges where it makes sense to run, a 5.56 sniper system over these other systems. I think the bigger issue of the Sniper First SPR is kind of missing the point of what an SPR is actually meant to be. The SPR is meant to be a rifle that coexists within the unit, whatever your unit size is. Something that extends the range, yes, but also something that can flex back into the role of a rifleman with basically zero friction. I think this is very important in the context of citizen preparedness, which are universally quite small without a dedicated mission set most of the time. So having 25% of your firepower being towards a dude with a 12 to 13 pound pike with a tiny little pistol dot on the top as his only real functional aiming solution for most quote-unquote fighting scenarios is a big ask in most environments. I'm strongly of the opinion now that fighting rifle with LPVOs have approached upwards of 80% of the range capability of dedicated 5.56 sniper SPRs, that the juice is no longer worth the squeeze to go all in on the land of min-maxing. It's easy to get lost in the sauce of when the majority of times we shoot these things where it's on a tripod at a very static range, known distance and all that, but that's really not the point of the SPR, at least I don't think so. It's meant to do that, yes, but it also needs to do all of the other things, and I find these concessions make it do all those other things. I keep shilling my boy Pseudo-Actual, go watch his channel, and he does what we think these things are meant to be used in. He does run and gun, he's shooting targets up close, very close, medium range, and then also some very hard long-range shots, all with a setup that looks a lot like a fighting rifle first SPR. My experience has largely been the same. I used to own very nice long-range oriented SPRs, like we all did in the 2010s, where everyone, was a sniper rifle. But nowadays, I find myself moving away from that, even when I get to occasionally shoot very nice precision-oriented guns with very nice heavy scopes on top, because, well, in practice, they're kind of a huge pain in the ass. And for the stuff I do, where we're engaging in a single sitting, 50-yard targets, 100-yard targets, a couple 300-yard targets, and then also 600-yard targets, all from kind of a less optimal shooting position, I still find myself gravitating towards the fighting rifle-centric SPR. Now, obviously, I'm going to have issues at range, especially when we're just proned out or off of a tripod compared to those other rifles, but it's really not as much of a difference as you'd think. Really, only the magnification is going to let you down, which is going to hurt for, as I said, spotting your misses or engaging very small headshot-sized targets, which 10x admittedly does struggle at. But that's the trade-off I'm ultimately willing to make to get a rifle that I'm actually willing to grab in a scenario that dictates me wanting to grab this over a general-purpose rifle. Anyway, that's been my thoughts. That's the spiel. That's Brassfax talking about his one true love, the SPR, again and again. Thanks for spending your Friday lunch break with me. I'm about to black out because I can't breathe through my nose. See ya! Ugh. Rolling extravaganza.